There is a very specific, deeply human panic that sets in when a phone illuminates a dark bedroom. A call at 3 in the morning never brings good news. It is a universal signal that something out in the world has gone terribly wrong. In the short film 3:03 a.m., a woman named Laura Martinez endures that exact panic every single night. At exactly 3 minutes past 3, the precise minute her husband Daniel died in the hospital, her phone rings. The caller ID displays his name, and the call originates from a dead, cracked smartphone sitting in a cardboard box in the garage. The setup sounds like a classic ghost story, but the film strips away almost all the expected tropes of the genre. There are no sudden jump scares, no demonic figures in the shadows, and no objects flying across rooms. Instead, the terror is built entirely within the mundane setting of a quiet suburban house. We are forced to watch a family sit in silence, listening to a deactivated phone ring. And we have to ask why this quiet repetition feels so much more suffocating than a physical threat. The haunting works because the threat is inescapable. The Martinez family is haunted by their own domestic trauma, a presence living entirely within their memories of the man they lost. To understand why this haunting is so effective, we have to look at how the film physicalizes the isolation of grief. The 3 surviving family members act as living avatars for distinct, highly recognizable psychological coping mechanisms. This diagram maps the family's trauma processing. Jake's reaction is rationalization, using technical explanations to build a mental wall. Ada uses pure avoidance, employing her headphones as a physical shield. Laura represents obsession. Frozen in time, she's trapped, unable to move forward. Because each family member has retreated into their own psychological corner, they are completely cut off from one another. This emotional fragmentation leaves them entirely defenseless against the creeping dread of the late-night calls. The filmmaker weaponizes this isolation through careful, deliberate sound design. As the clock steadily marches toward 3 o'clock, the audience feels the anticipation. When the ringtone finally breaks the silence, it isn't a generic sound. It's Daniel's actual ringtone, but pitched down just a fraction of a hair so that it sounds intrinsically wrong. The anomaly in the house maintains its grip on the family because they are fighting it separately. Their inability to process the loss collectively is the very thing giving the haunting its power over them. The climax of the film arrives when this dynamic breaks. In the living room, the family finally gathers around a central coffee table. They place their 3 silent smartphones down in the space between them, bringing their isolated fears into a shared light. When 3:03 hits, the phones don't ring in unison. Instead, they ring in a staggered, asymmetrical rhythm, lighting up one by one. The anomaly is no longer an isolated glitch in a bedroom. It feels like something is literally walking across the table toward them. But instead of retreating into rationalization or avoidance, Laura makes a choice. She tells her children to answer the phones together. They stop hiding. They put the devices on speaker and force a collective confrontation with whatever is on the other end of the line. Daniel's voice fills the room, tired, warm, and clear. He explains that he isn't trying to scare them. He's calling because he heard them in the hospital room during his final moments, and he just needed to acknowledge it. Facing the anomaly as a family strips away its horrific facade. The dread evaporates, and the monster becomes a vulnerable human memory. The haunting in 3:03 a.m. is ultimately a physical manifestation of a psychological holding pattern. Unresolved grief requires an outlet, and when ignored, it demands attention in increasingly severe ways. This flowchart illustrates the paranormal event as a feedback loop. Avoiding trauma causes the ghost to demand attention with increasing intensity, driving further avoidance. Listening acts as a circuit breaker. Tension releases, the minute ticks to 3:04 a.m., and the cycle is permanently broken. We see this internal shift externally when Laura reaches across the table and turns Daniel's photograph upright. She is no longer frozen in an obsession with his death. She has accepted him as a living memory. 3:03 a.m. borrows the architecture of a horror film to accurately map out the painful reality of the mourning process. It shows us exactly how we create our own ghosts. Trying to outsmart pain with logic, or drowning it out with noise, or freezing completely in place, the internal pressure only grows. The things we refuse to look at will always take on monstrous shapes in the dark. True closure requires us to stop pretending the pain isn't there. Banishing our internal ghosts requires us to finally pick up the phone, face the dread, and listen to what our grief is saying.